A very good evening to you. Welcome to another Hot Button Issue broadcast right here on Choice Television with me, Timothy Polion. We conclude at 10 o'clock with the clip that peaked, and between now and that time we'll be focusing on a range of issues because my guest has the capacity to speak on some dominant issues, wide-ranging. It's a smorgasbord of issues that we'll be focusing on this evening's broadcast. For example, international relations, a little politics. We'll be focusing on the impacts report, much talked about, and no doubt we'll be focusing on some aspects relating to the media in St. Lucia. That's how well versed my guest is, and he's a former permanent secretary in St. Lucia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, former St. Lucia ambassador to the United Nations, and former CARICOM ambassador to Haiti. Earl Huntley, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Timothy. You left out one thing, sports.
Oh, former president of the St. Lucia Football Association. Right. And incidentally, it was just a few days ago that some of my friends were speaking about you and saying that you provided human service to football in St. Lucia, and definitely that should not go unrewarded.
Yeah, well, I always like to remind people that in those days, St. Lucia was number 3 in the Caribbean. That's how good we were.
And at that time, you had defeated Jamaica?
We had defeated, no, Jamaica defeated us. We had defeated Guyana. Yeah. Jamaica defeated us in the semi-final match that would have brought us. But a lot of our players were injured then, by that time. But we were number 3 after Jamaica, Trinidad, and then St. Lucia.
Focusing now on the just released, well, part of it, the impacts report.
Yeah.
And the Prime Minister addressed the nation on March the 8th. Much anticipated address. Do you think that St. Lucia is kowtowing to the United States because of its power, because of its influence, because of what it can do to us? Because I think on our own volition, I don't think any government of St. Lucia would have wanted to undertake such a probe into the operations of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force.
We don't know, but
no, because to me it's unprecedented. You have had inquests into so-called extrajudicial killings, but not a report of that magnitude.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say kowtowing. I mean, there was pressure put. As you know, we've held some aid, and that is something I want to look at, to the nature of the aid, because I have my own questions about the nature of the aid we were getting to our security forces. But there was a request made, and so the government went along with it. The United States has the capacity to put pressure on smaller states, and they did that.
And you think that we were left with absolutely no choice?
Well,
but to give in to the request of the United States?
It was in our interest to do so.
Why?
It was in our interest both in terms of the management of our police force and finding out what really happened. From that point of view, it is in our interest. It was also in our interest to keep good relations with the U.S.
Yeah, but when we already had undertaken those inquests, I think 6 or 7 of them, which basically...
but if somebody else tells you, look, you need to look at it again, and if you don't, these are the consequences. In fact, the consequences, the consequences were already there. They had already withdrawn aid, from what I understand.
What if it was just a human rights activist who called on you to look at it again?
Human rights activists is not the U.S. They say in international relations, countries do not have friends, they have interests. So you protect your interests, and that is what happened. But I say it was also in our interest as a country, as a people, to have the thing thoroughly investigated. Even if there was an inquest made, there were still allegations. And don't forget, there were, from what I understand, I wasn't here at the time, but there were human rights activists here who were saying, look, something is wrong. Something needs to be looked into.
And those human rights activists were not taken seriously. They were pilloried. Okay, so I do not believe that whatever they said at the time really mattered to any of the top officials, whether
or the citizenry of the country. The citizenry of the country didn't get up and say, look, do something about it. I mean, you can't blame only the officials, the citizens of the country. And from the responses I'm hearing, I think the citizenry of the country still need to examine that issue. Again, examine their own reaction to that issue.
So is the government, by extension the Prime Minister, on the horns of a dilemma? Primarily because he certainly has to undertake that particular initiative to basically appease the United States. But doesn't he have to pay attention as well to the political implications?
Yeah, well, it's not just a matter of appeasing the U.S. Don't forget, this is a government that came in, a party that came into power, and one of the issues of this campaign was good governance. Now, if you came in on a platform of good governance and something has brought to your attention, which is really the opposite of good of good governance, then it's incumbent upon you to do something about it.
But you would have done it on your own free will.
Yes, I don't know whether they would have done it or not. The point is it has been done. Somebody requested it. It's true it's the U.S. that requested it, and the U.S. has the power to request it. We have to be realistic. We're dealing with the superpower in the hemisphere. And as I said, you have interests. You protect your interests. You don't have friends in international relations.
So therefore, Ms. Dantley, we cannot beat our chest and say we're an independent nation. We're
well, one of the things that one of the lessons out of this is that it shows us the limits. If we didn't know, it shows us the limits of our independence. In that you have a superpower on your doorstep. They can exert pressure on you, and they will exert the pressure when it's in their interest to do so. And because you're a smaller power, then you would have to give in, even if you're independent. And that is why it is important for small countries to act together, particularly small countries in the region like ours to act together. One of the other aspects of this that has come home to me, one of the other lessons or the implications of that report is what I call, it shows us one of the consequences of our failure to be more united in the region. And that is why I say that small countries have to act together. And why regional cooperation is so important, regional political unity. First of all, the report was not prepared by any St. Lucian body, it was prepared by a regional body. The second thing is that it shows us how we really need each other in some areas of governance that we cannot do on our own. And security is one of them. And I want to, security and governance. And I want to read something to you, which came back to me when I heard this summary of what was in this report. It is by Sir Arthur Lewis. Sir Arthur Lewis, our Nobel laureate, is usually cited for his work in economics, etc. Not much is said about his work in trying to get those countries, the smaller islands. In fact, first the Federation when it was breaking up, when he tried to mediate, and his efforts in trying to get the small islands, the Little Eight, Barbados and the Windwards and Leewards together. And I want to read this to you and to the people. He's talking about the need for federation. He says, from the Agony of the Eight, which was written in 1965, when the talks for the Little Eight were falling apart, federation is the only framework which will guarantee law and order, good government, financial stability, the recruitment and retention of good technical staff, and the ability to attract financial assistance from outside, including the power to borrow. If each little island goes off on its own, its people must suffer. And then again, he says the fundamental issues about federation are law and order, control of the police, the independence of the civil service, the magistrates and the judiciary, financial integrity, the ability to recruit and hold good technical staff. The political leaders take it for granted that anything they will do is democratic and right, but they tend to ignore these issues. They make federation a question of customs unions, freedom of movement, exclusive lists, concurrent lists, and the like. All this is secondary. The fundamental reason for federating these islands is that it is the only way that good government can be assured for their peoples. Then I heard the former commissioner of police, one of the former commissioners of police, Mr. Phillips, in reaction to this saying, but you know, why can't we go back to the time when there was almost like a regional police force, where the commissioner didn't come from St. Lucia, he came from somewhere else, and the commissioner from Antigua came from somewhere else. This is what this is referring to. That's why I'm saying this is the other implication of that report for me, that you talk about us having to give in to the bigger power, and I talked about the limits of our independence. And it says to me that in that regard, we have gone the wrong way. That's Arthur Lewis was right. We can only guarantee good governance if those islands are united together politically.
Certainly, that's a man with a lot of foresight. It goes without saying anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But what will really cause us to come together? Do you think it is because the leaders do not want to cede sovereignty?
That's what it is. And he says so. And he says, isn't there enough statesmanship in those islands for it to happen? That basically, and he says at the end of the book, he's hopeful, he's positive. He says that these islands will get together again in some form of association. He doesn't think Jamaica should be in it. But he says it won't happen until this generation of leaders is dead. And that was the generation of the 60s and 70s. But while that generation has virtually passed away, there's a new generation now. But from my observation, the attitudes that prevailed in the 60s and the 70s are still there. And it's not just among the political leaders. Look at what has happened with West Indies cricket. That people vote. Look at what happened with Jamaica, that they voted for Cameron because he was Jamaican. So there's this, two things. Insularity is still very strong among those islands, and people still want to hold on to the power of being king in a little island. That is the crux of the problem.
Can the people have a say in determining what happens going forward with regard to the structure of governance in terms of fostering unity in the Caribbean?
Yeah, well, if the people are consulted, if they're not consulted, people also have to organize themselves into movements to change. If things are not happening at the top, you have to have people who can mobilize on the ground.
And you didn't have a strong civil society movement?
No, we don't. We don't. In fact, all the attempts at political union that we have had, federation, etc., it has always been from the top. There has never been a civil society movement, a grassroots movement from the bottom to say to the leaders, look, you see what has happened with the police force in St. Lucia. You see what is happening, in fact, in St. Kitts now. There are problems with the police chief saying that he was removed because he was political, etc. That there are certain things, the security questions, there are certain things we just have to do together. I mean, when you look at our population, St. Kitts 40,000 people. St. Kitts and Nevis 40,000. St. Kitts 30,000. Dominica 80-something thousand. So how do you expect that you'll stand up to the might of the United States? I'm not saying that if you're together, it will be any easier, but at least there's strength in numbers.
But going back
Let's
to
go back. Yeah.
back to
but I'm saying that
yeah.
is one of the for me this is one of the implications. It shows us that in that regard we have failed, and one of the ways of correcting this is to go that way in terms of regional security.
Back to the impact report. Will it make a difference, irrespective of what action is taken by the Director of Public Prosecutions?
Difference to whom?
The United States.
Well, it should.
Because I'm telling you, I do not think it will make a difference.
But let us look at what happened. The U.S. has said, okay, we believe that there were gross human rights violations by your police, elements of your police force, and therefore we're going to use the Leahy Law, which, by the way, is about military assistance. And that's I want to come back to the question of the kind of assistance we're getting from the U.S. Therefore, we are suspending assistance. You have to do something about it. The government has done something about it. The government has had an investigation done by a regional team. The regional team has given its report. The report has gone to the Director of Public Prosecutions. As the Prime Minister said in his statement, there's a separation of powers between the executive and the judiciary. So it has gone there, and he has said it has gone there, so we know it is with the DPP. It is very important that she has to deal with it. So the government has followed the process. Whether or not the DPP brings charges, the process has been entered to by the government. Let us assume that the DPP decides that no charges are to be brought. Okay? That's the end of the matter. If she decides that charges are to be brought, and charges are brought, and people are convicted or not convicted, whatever the result, that is the end of the process, and the United States should respect that. Let's take the shooting of this black teenager in Ferguson. There was a grand jury, secret. The grand jury determined that the policeman was not responsible. The policeman did not commit a murder. It was not homicide, and that was that. And they had to respect the process. The Justice Department also investigated and didn't find the policeman culpable of any crime. That is the end of the process. So if you have also asked us, suggested that there's something wrong, we have gone through our due process, then you really have no case to put any pressure on us.
Because you're looking at it from this perspective, and I think you're being logical. But
why shouldn't they be logical on this
one? But considering the U.S. would want to
no, but they must
understand.
No, but you made an allegation. You made an allegation. You believe there are gross human rights violations. We investigated.
But the U.S. has a copy of that impacts report.
Right.
And certainly it will be going through with a fine-tooth comb, and based on the outcome, it will ask questions out of necessity.
Yeah, but it goes to your director of public prosecutions, like going to their grand jury, and the judiciary has decided X or Y. The judiciary decides, okay, there's something in it, we can go forward. They decide, no, there's nothing in these allegations, we can't prove it in a court of law, we can't go any further with it. And I do not see why they will not respect that process. There's no other way to do it. You can't, because the U.S. says that somebody, a policeman shot somebody, just go and send the person up. There's a presumption of innocence under our Constitution until you can prove the person guilty. And if the government has demonstrated, as I said, it has gone through the process, the due process, then there's really nothing else the U.S. can do. If it doesn't, if it insists that it is not satisfied with it, then it is doing that for other reasons, not for that reason.
Now, earlier you made mention you took issue with the fact that the United States withdrew assistance to
but I didn't take issue. Well, I have questioned, in fact, from the time when I heard this thing, I have always questioned the nature of the United States assistance to our police.
But before you continue, allow me to read something to you. And the former Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis in 1998 made a comment. And it says...
Prime Minister Douglas?
Dr. Dennis Douglas. Dr. Dennis Douglas, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, speaking about the U.S. position on the EU preferential banana regime, said that Washington must not see everything within the crucible of narcotics. There are other social problems that exist in the Caribbean, and a lot of these social problems, to some extent, the United States can help and has not helped.
I agree with him, and that's what I was coming to. The United States assistance to us, in terms of security assistance, started after the Grenada intervention in 1983, when the RSS finally came together, and the regional security system, everybody had their forces. And that assistance is military. It is still military, what they are giving us. And it is assistance to help with drug interdiction to the U.S., interdiction of drugs going to the U.S. And that is why I'm saying that the kind of assistance we have got from the U.S. has been more in the interests of the U.S. than in our own policing interests. What we need here is to train our policemen to be good detectives, to solve our crimes, the murders here, the thefts or whatever. But the emphasis is on military training, on what is important to the U.S. In fact, I meant to do, even before this thing came up, I actually meant to go and see what exactly was the nature of the assistance that we were getting, how much it was costing us, and whether in fact we had ever got from the United States the kind of training I'm saying that our forces need here in terms of what is important for us in solving our own crimes not related to drug trafficking to the U.S. I remember asking the former Commissioner of Police, Mr. Osbert Regis, a couple of years ago on that same issue. And I was saying to him, when was the last time we got our policemen trained in England? And he told me he was the last person. And all the training we have had since then is paramilitary. It's to the paramilitary side of our police, and I'm wondering, is that what we really need? Do we really need that? And you can see some of the implications when some of the policemen go. You go to bring in a mentally charged person, and you see some SSG fellows, some big M16s who are trained to shoot. They're military, so you should not be, in a sense, surprised at the kind of results that you get. I'm not saying that it. In fact, I heard the former commissioner, the present commission, the one who is Mr. Francois, after the last incident where somebody was shot in before the mentally charged person, and he was saying that, well, the policemen are not trained to handle situations like that. And I'm saying you don't need any training to know that if this person is unarmed and you have a huge M16 or whatever you have in your hands, that if you shoot him, you're going to kill him. That you don't need somebody to tell you not to shoot to kill. But the thing is, your training has given you, has done that to you.
Talking about the kind of contribution that the U.S. has made in terms of just military hardware and so on, don't you think that, again, if the region was operating from a united front, that it could have asked the U.S. to make other contributions other than this one? Because if you continue to make those donations and no one is saying to you, that's not really what I need something better or something different,
then you'll keep on doing that.
Then
And in fact, we have this, how do you call it, the exercises they do every year.
Trade winds?
Trade winds. These are military exercises. Is that what we need? And that's why I say I've questioned the exact benefit to us. I mean, I have not looked at it in detail to see what it is, but I have always questioned the nature of the assistance that we're getting. And if the nature of the assistance is not what you want, then...
Can we dictate in
but
any
in
way?
fact, in fact, it's also interesting that although that assistance has stopped, that from what I heard the acting commissioner say, our Coast Guard, etc., has still survived. We have still been able to find a means to operate without that assistance. And therefore, you have to ask yourself, do you really need that assistance?
I think it's the same, it's analogous to Cuba and the embargo and learning to sustain yourself irrespective of you not being provided with certain things that you're accustomed to.
But that's a whole incident, the whole situation should force us to look at ourselves in a number of areas in relation to security and our justice system. There are a lot of things that we have to learn from this episode, and I hope we learn from it.
The upcoming meeting between the President of the United States and the CARICOM leaders, that's scheduled for Jamaica in April the 9th, April 10th, thereabout. And following that, Mr. Obama will be traveling to Panama to participate in another meeting, and that is the Summit of the Americas. What do you think can come or should come out of this in terms of the Caribbean and the United Front calling on President Obama to do certain things? Or this is just another talk shop or a photo op?
Those meetings are more than, they're not just photo ops and talk shops. It is an opportunity to interface with the leader of the United States and to try to get some of your concerns and views across. In fact, it is a meeting that has been proposed, has been in the making for probably about 2 years. I remember when I was in Haiti, that meeting first came up. I'm surprised it is in Jamaica and not in Haiti. That's where it was supposed to have been. But anyway, no, it is more than it is not just a photo op. It is a chance to speak to him, and I said to put your views across, to negotiate and to see whether he would understand, because he's the one at the top end. I mean, it is that is a chance to make him understand your own situation, your own views, your own opinions. Because in the normal run of things, he will not have had the benefit of hearing directly from you.
How much does the Caribbean mean to the United States, if anything at all? Because
well,
you hardly find a situation where a U.S. president would visit the Caribbean. I mean, you had Reagan's visit in April of 1982 over in Barbados. That was the first by a U.S. president.
That was around Grenada.
Yeah, since December the 5th to the 13th, 1940, when President Franklin Roosevelt inspected British bases in Antigua, the Bahamas, St. Lucia, and Jamaica for possible American use. So, I mean, do we mean anything?
Yes, we do. We are security concern for the U.S. We are the soft underbelly of the U.S., the whole southern zone of the U.S. Because in the old days, in the 60s and 70s, because of the Cold War, they were concerned that they didn't want communism in the hemisphere.
But the Cold War has ended.
Right, the Cold War has ended, but there are other concerns, security concerns for them. The whole question of terrorism, the question of drug trafficking. These are the concerns for them. This is why those countries are important for them.
But we just recently did that some naval ships will be removed from the Caribbean waters.
That doesn't mean that that the countries are still not important. They're probably just finding another way of doing what it is that they are doing. Don't forget, technology continues to improve by leaps and bounds. So I will never forget when they caught Osama bin Laden. I don't know whether you remember that the president and the secretary of state, etc., were actually watching the operation taking place from the White House and seeing the thing happen in front of them. So the technology is different. So if they withdraw one or two ships, I don't think that makes the region less important for them until the threat of terrorism as so defined. And now they are now confirming that there are people from the Caribbean, from Jamaica, from Trinidad, who have gone across to join ISIS. So the region will continue to remain important for them.
But there's some tremendous concerns being expressed with regard to those countries in the Caribbean monitoring those individuals when they return to our shores.
In fact, they have admitted that we don't have the ability or the capability to do that. So of course you're going to see more of that kind of assistance to us, military security assistance in that area. So it is important. It is also important for him to meet with Caribbean leaders.
And that's the first segment of Hot Button Issue. This segment was brought to you with the very kind compliments of Omega XL, Cadet Distribution, and Tiles Plus. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with the broadcast. Once again, the first segment of Hot Button Issue has brought you the very kind compliments of Omega XL, Cadet Distribution, and Tiles Plus. My guest this evening is Ambassador Earl Huntley, who is also a former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In just a moment, we'll be taking your calls. Let's speak about a mundane issue. Selection of the next Secretary General of the Commonwealth. I'm telling you, it's mundane to the vast majority of my viewers.
But it's important for
I
the
think
region.
It's a very important issue.
It's a very important issue for the
Why
region.
are we going to come up with a consensus candidate for this position when it is scheduled for there to be an election in November of this year?
Yeah, I don't know why. In November, as you said, there's going to be elections for the Commonwealth Secretary General. It is the Caribbean still, the Caribbean and Africa. The Caribbean has three candidates. We have Ron Sanders, who's proposed by Antigua and Barbuda. We have Baroness Scotland from Dominica, who grew up in England, is a member of the British Labour Party, etc., or the Conservative Party, I'm not sure, but she's in the upper house in the Lords. And we have the Minister of Planning from Trinidad. Botiwari. My understanding is that there are 9 countries supporting Ron Sanders. There's 2 supporting Dominica's candidate, Dominica and Belize, and just Trinidad supporting the Trinidad candidate. And one would have thought, and it has happened before, one of the things of CARICOM is coordination of foreign policy. And foreign policy also includes trying to get single candidates, trying to get your people into those international organizations. It's important for for Caribbean people to be there, to be in positions of influence, to help your region. And the last time we had somebody, it was 25 years ago, it was Sridhar Ramphal. And if we don't go with one candidate, we are most likely going to lose. Let me give you the lineup. There are 12 Caribbean countries, 18 from Africa, and there's an African candidate. 13 from the Pacific, 8 from Asia, and 3 European, meaning basically the UK, Malta, and Canada. So we're already starting at a disadvantage to the African. Let us assume that the African bloc is solid. So if you go with your 12 votes divided, then you're most likely going to lose. They have had about 3 meetings on this. They met in Cuba last year. They met in February in the Bahamas. And what made the thing look really bad for us was that Ron Sanders actually withdrew when there was no consensus, and now he's back. So it really shows a lot of confusion on our part and disunity on something that is important to the region.
Who do you think should get a nod?
Of the 3 candidates, Ron Sanders is the best of the 3. He's been very involved in Commonwealth matters. He was the Antigua's ambassador to the UK and was therefore working the Commonwealth Secretariat, has been on the Commonwealth Secretariat Eminent Persons Task Force. So he's very knowledgeable of Commonwealth matters. The lady from Dominica, Baroness Scotland, is in a sense more British, more English than Dominican. She spent all her life in the UK and very involved in UK politics. And while she would, in a sense, be also familiar with Commonwealth matters because she was actually a minister in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, but she's perceived, given her background, as being more a British candidate than a Dominican candidate. And Botiwari has just no experience in that field at all. It's a strange candidate. So that of the three candidates, Ron Sanders would seem to be the better one. One would have expected that if 9 countries are supporting one, that there would have been a consensus around, which is what normally happens in CARICOM. Okay, 9 of us want this person, 2 want this person. Okay, let us have a consensus, and we all go for go with the majority view. It hasn't happened for I don't know for what reason, but if they do not get a consensus by July, when is the next CARICOM heads, then I am afraid we will not get the position. Even if they get a consensus by July, it's leaving it very late, because you then have to go out. Well, you should have been campaigning very hard already, particularly as
just about 4 months.
Right, right. And you have a block of 18 votes against you already, assuming, as I said, that the African countries would be a bloc.
What is there to lose if one of those individuals are not selected as Secretary General of the Commonwealth? When I think there are questions to ask about the relevance of the Commonwealth right now.
Yes, it is still very relevant. It is still very relevant. There's the technical assistance you get from the Commonwealth. There's what is called the CFTC, the Commonwealth Fund for Technical Assistance. There's a political solidarity, but in the technical areas, there's a Commonwealth Foundation. There are a number of things that you can still get from the Commonwealth.
Isn't the Commonwealth
but it is not as I would say in international political terms, in international relations. It is probably not as influential a body as it was, let us say, 30, 40 years ago.
When, for example, it played a role in ensuring that Zimbabwe became independent.
Yeah.
And among a range of other issues, for example, apartheid played a key role in ending apartheid in South Africa.
It is still involved in good governance in those countries. The Commonwealth is still very involved. So there is still a role for the Commonwealth. It's still a very important organization to be part of. And if you have somebody from your region heading the organization, then it's even better for the region.
What we'll do right now is to put the telephone number on screen so that you can call with your questions and comments for my guest. It's already 21 minutes before 10 o'clock.
But it seems that the Caribbean, for some reason or other, is not agreeing on consensus candidates. We have this a problem also with the OAS. The position of Assistant Secretary General is up for elections this year. We have 2 candidates, one from Guyana, one from Belize. Normally, there's always been one candidate. Fortunately for us, there's no challenge from Central America or Latin America. They usually leave that one up to us. But then if there was a challenge, then again would have had difficulties. Okay,
let's take your calls. Good evening. You're watching Hot Button Issue on Choice Television. You're on the air.
Good evening, Timothy.
Hi, good evening. How are you, sir?
Okay, how are you, Raz?
Hey, cool there, man.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Huntley.
Yes, I can hear him very faintly.
Right.
Okay, we'll try to improve that.
Okay.
Continue.
The militarization of police forces actually started with Reagan in America itself, you know.
The militarization of
police forces.
Police forces, yeah, okay.
Yeah. During, as you rightfully said, you rightly said, during the drug fight against drugs. Okay? And that has evolved into the 21st century, into the fight against terrorism. So this is a problem that's endemic, not only in the Caribbean, but also in America. Okay?
Yeah.
Right. So it's not as if they deliberately did add a strategy different for St. Lucia than for us.
No, I'm saying they did it in the region after Grenada for their own interests.
Right.
And I'm saying, did we really need that, given our own needs?
No, but I mean, we're shirking our responsibilities there, you know. I mean, you recognize America is a superpower. Ultimately, what matters to them is their dominance. And the military is what, you know, that, you know. So, we would have had to, after all, we're independent, we would have had to have mechanisms to developing our democracies on our own. And that would include our judiciary systems and so on. Because America, notwithstanding, look at all what is happening now to, say, black people. But the point is, you cannot get a conviction. The white police, they get in a way. No? At least there is a system. It's not working. It's not just, it's not fair. But there's a system. But we were going and moving along as if there's nothing really, you know, Earl. I mean, there have been hundreds of murders and that's just as if we oblivious to that. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. You know, this thing has been going on, and we really cannot justify our inaction by somehow trying to defer our responsibilities.
Yeah. Well, I don't disagree with you, and that's why I said we have to learn from this.
Yeah, we have to take responsibility for ourselves, my brother, in this regard. You know, are we not Homo sapiens just like the Americans?
Are we not?
Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
I mean, are we not civilized the same way? Do we have consciences and hurt and so? I mean, look at the amount of things that have happened in St. Lucia, and we turn away, we turn a blind eye, my brother. And it's ironic that it has to be people, quote unquote, who are suspected to really be criminals, their demise, that triggered this thing. So at the end of the day, I find the discussion is centered too much around America. You know what I'm saying? And that is neither frugal at this time. You know, this is it is not frugal for our economy, and we need to, because what we need to do is put a system in place, like you said, so at least you could, the Americans could see you doing something, somebody is being, you know, questioned, and something is happening.
Okay, sir.
Right.
Thank you so much. Let's get another call. Good evening.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, good evening to you, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Earl. Yeah, I want to take up where the gentleman left off that call there, you know, because I seem to recall the big arms and the big guns began with the SSU. Okay, and
that's when that's when your brother was part of it.
Exactly, exactly. That came from Guyana. Yeah, the idea came from Guyana. My brother was ahead of that, and it got worse with the Grenada situation. But the point that I want to make, and the point that caller made a while ago, is that we ask for that kind of artillery. We ask for that kind of training. In fact, I've written reams.
Did we, after Grenada, did we ask for it, or was it, or we told that this is what we're going to give you?
No,
now?
I mean, we asked for the arms.
Okay.
Yeah, because we didn't want Grenada happening. You know, our leaders were afraid of Grenada happening here, you know.
In fact, you're very correct on that. Let me just go back. They had been talking about a regional security system since in the 60s.
Well,
and they couldn't agree upon it. They couldn't agree where it would be headquartered. And it was only after what happened in Grenada that they finally got together and got the RSS.
So what the caller was saying a while ago is that we have at some time to take responsibility. For example, the poor state of our justice system. The poor state of police investigating police when people are killed. No inquests. You know, all of those things have nothing to do with the Americans. It is we who think life is cheap, and people get shot and nobody wants to. I mean, even that latest investigation, it was forced on us. We didn't care. We knew all along that there was something suspect about this, but we did nothing. We were not interested. We didn't take action until America decided not to give us any more money. So I agree with the earlier call. We have to start taking some responsibility for our actions. The importation of those guns was because we felt we needed those guns to stay in office, to fend off coups, to fend off the drug people, and the only way we knew how was guns. And a lot of people were advising that the social conditions, the poverty, and so on in the country needed to be attended to. But we ignored that and decided to rule by the gun. And we're dying by the gun. Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling. Hot button issue. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Tim.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Good evening, Mr. Huntley.
Yeah, good evening.
Mr. Huntley, you seem to be an authority on law and the Constitution. Now, you
I wouldn't
spoke
say
of-
I'm an authority on law.
Well, I don't see you reading any of the sections. You know, you spoke about the DPP having the report. I would want to find out if you can give her any guidance as to how to proceed
Okay, caller.
with the report that she has.
Caller, don't be facetious, sir. Let's not be facetious on that particular issue there. All right? If
I'm
you want
not
to
being-
if you want to be serious, let's be serious about this whole matter. Okay?
Tim, this is very serious. Okay?
No, I can't
This
give
is
her any
very
guidance.
serious sorry?
I cannot give her any guidance. I'm not an authority
Okay.
on that.
Because you see, what happens is, a lot of people, come on media.
Caller,
and-
I've heard you made that point before. I think
I'm
you're a police
saying-
officer, but you're not an attorney. All right? You're a police officer, right? But you're not an attorney.
Tim,
So,
listen
and-
to me.
and-
I
and-
never
and-
said I was a police officer.
and-
You don't have to be a police officer or attorney to read and to
Yes,
know
so
what
you
the law
seem to be
says.
taking Mr. Lee to task primarily
what?
because he
I'm
spoke
not taking
on a
him to
legal
task.
issue.
I'm just asking him if he can do it. He simply says that he can do it. You understand?
Caller,
Because-
I understand where you're coming from, eh? I really do
I don't
understand where you're coming
understand.
from. I do.
No, what
He's
I'm
being
saying-
sarcastic
what
on the
I'm
whole
saying,
issue.
Tim, what I'm suggesting is that maybe, you, Mr. Huntley, and others can do what I'm doing and probably take a look at the legislation because it's available at the printer. You can go there, get the Constitution, get the other laws.
Caller, if you have something to contribute to the program meaningful, do that. But you're going in circles. You want to contribute something to the discussion tonight?
But of course,
Contribute,
of course,
all right. Contribute
because-
something.
because,
Contribute
Tim, I
something.
want
Caller,
to tell
contribute
Mr.
something
Huntley-
meaningful.
Well, are you going to listen to me?
Go ahead.
I want to tell Mr. Huntley that notwithstanding, the pronouncement that he has made with regards to the report, you see, our Constitution is clear. And whilst you might think that I don't understand it because I'm not a lawyer and whatever, okay, it says that when a competent court has inquired into a matter and has made a decision, okay, and that is from the Constitution, only a superior court can look into that matter, okay, through appeal or review. And I can give you the section. You can go to section 8, subsection 5 of our Constitution. You will find it there, okay. Now, for Parliament to even pass laws that goes against that would mean that those laws are unconstitutional. And you don't have to be a lawyer to know that. Okay, Tim? Have a good night. That's
All right.
what I live with you.
Okay, thank you so much for calling, sir. We continue to take your calls once again. This is Hot Button Issue right here on Choice Television. My guest this evening is Ambassador Earl Huntley, who is also a former PS in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening to you.
Good
Yes,
evening.
on the issue of
I can't hear this
being
person at all.
accountable.
You'll have to speak
and
up a
not
bit,
even
please.
being- Yeah, no, what I'm saying, why we're on the issue of being accountable
Mhm.
and not just leaving items, uninvestigated. The entire country is not being informed of a situation that Mr. Huntley was involved in. That is the Greenberg issue. And so what I'm asking Mr. Huntley, is it fair to the citizenry, okay, for something of such magnitude, for the Prime Minister to withhold it from the country? And even could he shed some light on it tonight, please?
All right, sir.
Because
I
You
didn't hear
get
the
it.
question at all.
Okay, what you were saying is that is it also fair that there's a matter that is linking you to, that is the Greenberg matter? Is it fair that it continues to be in secrecy?
I'm not here to talk about Greenberg. And it's not in secret, it's because is before arbitration at the moment.
Okay. We continue to take your calls. Once again, hot button issue right here on Choice Television with my guest, Mr. Earl Huntley, who is a former PS in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But going forward, do you think that we really can get ourselves out of this murky situation? I'm referring there to the matter involving the Royal St. Lucia Police Force and the United States. Do you think that there's a time frame by which we should try and settle this?
Well, I don't know what is the U.S. time frame because we don't know how long the DPP is going to take to deal with the matter. But what I will say is that we have to learn the lessons from it. As I've said, the U.S. wanted certain things done. As far as I'm concerned, the government has done its part. And as I said, I don't know what time frame they have, but once the government has gone through the process of investigating, of sending it to the relevant judicial authorities, I do not see why the U.S. should not change its position.
We have a call. Good evening. This is Hot Button Issue on the air.
Yes, good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
How you all doing?
Okay.
Okay, reference to a comment Mr. Huntley made, reference to the, first of all, I am a police officer. And Mr. Huntley made a comment in reference to the training that is being provided by the U.S. government to the police force. And I must say that the training, you must strike a balance. Don't forget we have open borders. Okay? And you must strike a balance. Reference to professional policing and the military training that you get. You never know when you will need that training at any point in time. Okay? You will, at some time, yes, we are a country, a democratic country, and at most times, the incidents that we have are incidents that are domestic, and sometimes you never know where there is an emergency. For example, in a disaster, you must have that kind of military training for you to encounter certain scenarios. Okay, and the military training that the police, the United States gives, is very, very necessary. Okay, yes, you must strike a balance where the training is concerned. So definitely we need the training, but
do we have the balance now?
Yes, I was coming to that. You need the balance with the domestic training. And also, I must say that the U.S. do not only provide military training. I've been a police officer for almost 30 years. And there is training provided where there is management training. You can call brokerage training, carpentry, everything that you can think of. But at the end of the day, it boils down to what the hierarchy believes that is necessary. Okay?
Are we making use of all these others?
Say that again?
Are we making use of all those other areas that are available?
Of course, of course. There are police officers who are trained in brokerage.
Okay.
Okay, there are police officers that are trained in electrical in electrical training. Okay, there are
so you're satisfied there's not an over emphasis on the military?
Say that again?
You're satisfied that there's not an over emphasis on the military?
But there is a balance. There is not in, and I believe there is not enough military training, because if you can recall, just recently there is a news memo came out where there's supposed to be some persons from the Caribbean who went for training for ISIS.
Yes, we spoke about that earlier.
Yes, so you never know when you're going to need that military training.
Well, you need,
yes,
you
must
need detective,
put it in
good
your
detective
closet.
work to find them out.
Say that again?
You may need good detective work to find them out.
Yes, you must do investigative work, yes. But at some point in time, you never know when that training will be necessary.
Okay.
That is what I'm saying.
Okay, I take your point. But there are also countries like Costa Rica who don't have an army, yeah?
But there are police officers that have the military training.
All right.
Okay, so you can turn from a sheep to a wolf at the snap of a finger.
Well, the thing is, the point is, though, you must turn from the sheep into the wolf at the right time, when it merits it.
Well, there you go again. It's just the appropriate timing that needs to be called upon. Okay, so in terms of the comment, to some extent, yes, that the training is necessary, but a balance must be struck. Reference to our domestic training, our dealing with our internal issues, and there also must be training to expect external problems also.
Okay,
Thank you.
I appreciate your contribution. Let's quickly move on to another issue, and that is the proliferation of media outlets in St. Lucia. At last count, I think we have about 21 radio stations, maybe 21, 22 radio stations. What do you make of this? I mean, at the time you were a broadcaster, you had only RCI
and Radio St. Lucia. We've made progress where the media is concerned. The televisions, more television stations now. But I'm also concerned about standards. Despite the fact that we have many more radio stations than some years ago. And that is expected with time and development. But I am also concerned that the standards are not as high as they should be, and not as the quality that.
Well, because with so many radio stations, automatically there'll be a dearth of talent.
There is a dearth of talent. There's a dearth of, and there's not enough training. People just come on who have not been there before. We need better standards. But I don't have a problem with a lot of radio stations, but the standards, particularly in terms of the news, the journalism, the discussions, this is what I'm concerned about.
Let's take a final call. Good evening, Hot Button Issue, on the air.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Hello?
Yeah,
Yes.
hello, good evening.
You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Okay, good night.
Good night to you.
How are you all doing?
Yeah, not
Okay.
too bad.
Okay. Puliwo, if I may tell you that the Prime Minister address to the nation on the report, I listen very carefully to it. But everybody have one emphasis on the police. The Prime Minister read and he said that it was businessmen, politicians, and police that are at the head of the crime in this country. Why is only the police people making an issue with? What about the other two? And I may suggest that if you play the clip that where the Prime Minister make that statement, so that people could spread the discussion around. Why is it only on the police that people hitting all the time?
Okay, let me allow Earl to respond to this, because he did make reference
yeah,
to
in fact, I'm glad he raised that, because a lot of people have, when I've listened to them, I don't think they heard what the Prime Minister said carefully. A lot of people are tying what is supposed to have happened with the police to his statement about corrupt politicians, public officials, businessmen, etc. What he said, or what he says the report says, is that the crime environment, not necessarily that particular episode, it doesn't mean it excludes it, but the crime environment generally is linked to those people.
Final comments from you, Earl?
Well, I would hope, as I said, that we learn the lessons that are to be learned from what has happened, whatever the outcome. There are lots of lessons for us. And as two of the callers said, that we really have to look in on ourselves as a people and see where we have allowed things to go wrong. Why did we get to that situation? Whether or not it is true, the point is the allegations are there. And therefore, we have to ask ourselves, how did we get there? And how do we go forward from there? And I will stress that one of the ways of going forward is the regional dimension. As you know, I'm a committed regionalist, and I think that what has happened here, what is happening in St. Kitts with the police, shows just how much we have failed by not going in that direction.
Thank you so much for being my guest, Mr. Earl Huntley. And as always, thank you so much for watching the broadcast and contributing via your calls. Time now for the Clip That Peaked. I wish to inform you that the Clip That Peaked features a clip that we had in the Choice News Now broadcast last evening featuring a politician, but that clip was memed and placed on Facebook. So it's that version that you'll be seeing on the Clip That Peaked. Stay tuned for it.
Let those who want to run away from their past run away. Let those who want to change the name change the name. Let those who want to change the accent change the accent. Chat to me back, chat to me back. Can you somebody that a girl can? Chat to me back, chat to me back. Them pop down but we still are. Chat to me back, chat to me back. Can you somebody that a girl can? Chat to me back, chat to me back. Them pop down but we still are.
Once again, as a broadcast, if it's Wednesday, we discuss a hot button issue right here on Choice Television. My name is Timothy Polion. Good night.